Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on overcoming hidden friction pharma manufacturing. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Philip. I'm the co-host for today. A quick housekeeping note. This session is being recorded and will be shared afterwards. If you have any questions, please submit your questions in the chat. We'll be answering them during the Q&A session at the end. And now I'm very pleased to introduce Thomas Halfmann, a renowned expert on smart factory with over 20 years of experience in digital transformation of pharma manufacturing. Thomas, thank you for joining. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Philip, for the introduction, and welcome to the webinar. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Today, I would like to focus on something that is present in almost every pharmaceutical manufacturing organization, but which is not really measured systematically. And this is the hidden friction in daily operations. So that's what we are talking about. So hidden frictions that ultimately result in maybe more losses and less productivity or less efficiency at the end of the day. And I also would like to conclude with how intelligent operations platform at the end of the day overcome these or help to overcome and reduce the hidden frictions in pharmaceutical manufacturing, and also help us to gain more performance and less losses at the end of the day. If we look at pharmaceutical manufacturing organizations today and the context in which they are operating, that has changed over the last years or maybe 1 or 2 decades significantly. So what we are seeing within pharmaceutical operations are more products, more variants of products as well. Batch sizes are becoming smaller, so which means at the end of the day, we introduce more complexity to the shop floor. At the same time, we are experiencing higher cost on productivity and pressure, higher pressure on cost and productivity, as well as on expectations for quality and compliance. Um, Expectations are also in regards of shorten the lead time and getting faster batch release, so basically getting the product out of the door faster than we ever had before. What we also should not underestimate is some constraints that we have in regards of workforce. So experienced operators are retiring. Operator knowledge, operator experience is becoming scarce, and the tacit operator knowledge is not necessarily available sitting within the systems that we have put in place. Over the last, whatever, 10 to 20 years, I think we, in general, as an industry, we have been quite good in order to automate our manufacturing environment. And talking about all the automation systems that we had in place, that have been putting in place, but also, let's say, the IT architecture and IT OT architecture that we created in order to retrieve more data, more information from our process, from our manufacturing process. So we introduced more systems like ERP for planning, MES for execution, LIMS for managing our laboratory data, automation systems all over the place, collecting data from the shop floor. So in regards of complexity, we added an architecture that consists of more systems, more data, and at the end of the day, more complexity that we have to manage here. But so that's one side. I mean, and the other side is the daily operational reality. So the daily operational reality is not only just sitting in the systems that I just mentioned, be it an MES or be it a LIMS or be it a QMS system. The daily operational reality also is within Excel spreadsheets that you still find all over the place, emails that are exchanged between departments, phone calls, meetings, and so on. So all the communication that's going to happening between operations, production, maintenance, quality, supply chain, and everybody else as a department or as an organization that is involved in the wider sense of production. So, for example, if a production manager looks at their operations today, they very often look at dashboards. So, in order to understand, well, how good are we in regards of performance when we are talking about efficiency. So one of the typical KPIs that we are measuring there is OEE. So maybe the production manager is looking at a dashboard which is saying, hey, our line or our organization is running at an OEE of 82%, as we have that here on the slide. That may be technically correct, but that 82% of OEE does not really tell, well, what has happened as well in operations. So it does not tell you anything about the time that we have spent with emails and meetings and phone calls, or where we have been waiting for decisions to be made on the shop floor. So what I want to say is, I mean, there's a lot of data that we are currently collecting when we're talking about pharmaceutical operations. But that but the data is not necessarily showing how well we respond to that data in regards of how fast are we in order to react to that data and put actions into place. When we are looking at a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, it may consist of two factories at the same time. On one hand, we have the visible factory that, as I already mentioned, that includes all that equipment that we have there in order to perform the operations, the automation systems. Then MES with providing us with an electronic batch record at the end of the day, ERP for planning, LIMS for all of our quality data, and so on. And then also the dashboards and reports that I mentioned before. So what the systems are recording are all the process steps that we have conducted in order to produce a certain good that we are supposed to produce. And there may be some issues on the way, but eventually at the end of the day, the batch is moved into review and release. But the people, the operators, the personnel that is performing these processes may experience something very different. It's not only that they are operating the manufacturing process and the systems that we have there in that what I call the visible factory. Their daily reality is also conversations, meetings, interpretations of data, not just looking at the dashboard, also what does that dashboard tell me in regards of the context and the impact of our actual manufacturing process. So that hidden factory that I'm just describing with all these meetings and phone calls, interpretation of data, is not necessarily some signal or some sign of poor management. Complex organizations, as we have that in pharmaceutical operations, always require human coordination. It's not that it is running completely operator free just based upon systems. So just to give you an example, if you look at a manufacturing line and a line coordinator may know if there is a certain alarm coming up once that may not be significant in regards of impact on performance. But if this alarm is coming up 3 or 4 times within an hour, then obviously something is wrong. And that knowledge is something that is sitting within the organization, in that particular case with that experienced operator. It's not necessarily sitting within the visible factory with all the systems. So MES knows maybe, for example, or a process control system maybe knows about that alarm, but it doesn't know, it doesn't tell us anything about what is the impact if that alarm shows up 3 times in an hour. So improving operational performance therefore requires not just getting more data out of our processes and connecting more systems in order to get that data. It requires to make that hidden factory where we are making decisions and driving actions more visible, more structured. So this is Anna, the lady here on the right side. So Anna is a shift supervisor in sterile filling. So she is arriving for her morning shift at 6 o'clock. First thing that she is going to do is the handover from the night shift to her shift in order to start into the day. So she's going through the documentation, and it states, for example, that the filling line is running. There was one minor equipment issue with the filling line during the night. Maintenance and QA have been informed. So technically, shift handover is done. She knows what was going on, and so she basically could start with her shift and continuing with the batch. But probably Anna still has some questions. So what exactly has happened? Was that issue that was there on that filling line, has that been finally resolved, or was maintenance just putting a temporary solution in place? Has maintenance identified what the cause of that issue was? And what does it mean that QA was informed? I mean, was it just an email sent to QA, or did they make any decision? So what Anna is doing is she starts to reconstruct what the situation is. So she follows up with maintenance, for example. Well, what is the actual status? Is there any technician who needs to do some maintenance work on the filling line in order to continue with the batch, or is that already been fixed? She maybe also calls QA in order to understand, can they just continue with the batch as it is, or does it require any investigation or any assessment by somebody from QA? So it takes them maybe half an hour, 35 minutes in order to have the full picture, what actually has happened and how she can proceed in her shift with the batch. So by 6:30, 6:35, Anna knows, well, nothing catastrophic, nothing really major has happened. She can continue with the shift, but she has lost 35 minutes of her shift time that she spends with reconstructing what already was knowledge within certain systems, but also within certain parts of the organization, like QA and maintenance. So there was no common view of all the departments involved in what has happened with that small minor issue in the night shift, so that she could start from there. Um, so all that information was somehow documented, but if we are thinking about how shift handovers are usually done, they should not answer just what has happened last night or what has happened in the previous shift. They also should answer, well, why does it matter? What is the impact at the end of the day also on the batch, on the production process, on also on our equipment as well? So what has already been done? What needs to be done? What remains still open for her shift to do in regards maybe of resolving that issue? And who owns all these actions? I mean, who's responsible at the end of the day? So a shift handover should not only just start from knowledge what has happened. It should start from knowledge what has happened. It should not start from reconstructing the knowledge. So I want you to meet Beat. So Beat is one of the most experienced packaging operators that we have. So over several shifts, Beat notices a recurring issue with the sensor on the label printing line in the packaging area, the label printer on the packaging line. So that that issue with the label printer didn't resolve into a complete stop of the line. It creates just a short interruption. The labels needed to be readjusted, and then the operator could fix it themselves, readjust the label, and continue with production. So was a minor issue that needs to be done, minor issue that needs to be resolved and could be resolved by just the operator fixing that directly on the line. But Beat mentioned this in the shift handover, so it has been towed to the next shift, and then it happens on the next shift again, and again and again and again. So after 3 shifts, they experience, well, 18, 20, 25 of these micro stops where the line was basically stopping for 1, 2, or 3 minutes. Operator fixed and adjusted that label, and they could continue with the packaging process. So at the end of the day, after 3 shifts, maybe there was a loss of 45 minutes, 1 hour of production there on the packaging line. So um, but the real loss is not only just that 1 minute, that 1 hour that has happened there on the packaging line. The real loss is all the coordination and activities that were done in order to address these micro stops. So operators repeatedly need to adjust the labels, stop their work, adjust the labels, continue with production. So these workarounds were done repeatedly, as I mentioned, 18 or 20 times within 3 shifts. It was reported, for example, to the shift supervisor. Shift supervisor checks the status several times, follows up on it, but still didn't really escalate it. Maintenance was called in, but because it was reported to them as a microstop, they didn't give that a high priority at the end of the day. So each individual stop was not just a big issue because with that workaround of adjusting the label, they just could continue. Maybe also QA became involved because it was impacting the labeling, and production schedule need to be adjusted because we have been, at the end of the day, cumulative lost 1 hour of production time. So that individual technical issue was small, but what really impacted the efficiency of the packaging line was that slow organizational response, because that pattern of and that frequency of that label adjustment that had to be done, that workaround that had to be done by that operator 18 or 20 times within 3 shifts, was not visible across the entire organization. So maintenance didn't know about that. Maintenance just was informed there's a small issue, there is an issue with the label printer, but not that there is a certain frequency behind this, and that frequency maybe is also increasing. The same for QA. I mean, they knew about the individual issues, but not about, they didn't see the full picture. So at the end of the day, valuable time was lost in a very slow escalation process. And that initial issue may have been slow, but that delay in that coordinated response created the real loss at the packaging line. So instead of, well, how serious is this individual event? They also should have asked, well, has that happened before in the previous shift? How often has it happened? Is that frequency that it's going to happen increasing? It's the same workaround of adjusting the labels, repeated again and again. So all that is sitting somewhere as a knowledge, as an experience within parts of the organization, but was not really visible and accessible for the rest of the organization. Or a third example is Daniel. So Daniel is a production manager who's responsible for several manufacturing areas. So every morning at 8:30, Daniel joins the production tier meeting or production management tier meeting. So the meeting is very well designed. They have a visual board for safety, quality, delivery, cost, people, and so on. Everything is covered. Um, so the team reviews what was the performance of the last day. Several issues have been discussed. Maybe a deviation is open. They're waiting on the results from the lab in order to release the batch. There's a maintenance action that is overdue. So everybody contributes something to that meeting. So half an hour later at 9 o'clock, the meeting ends and Daniel returns to his office. And then he realizes, well, now he knows what has happened on the last day, but actually some important questions are not really answered in that meeting. And that is, for example, well, who owns the next step for these recurring line issues that we have been talking about? When will QA provide that required assessment? What is about these delays in regards of the lab results? Has that been escalated, and to whom? And which requires his support as a manager for today. So it does not necessarily mean that this was a badly conducted meeting. It just means that this meeting was designed and optimized for information exchange, but it was not designed as an operational meeting that creates value in order to make decisions and drive actions. So when a good tier meeting should not only exchange what has happened, a good tier meeting should also have clarity on what decisions do we need to make, who owns the next actions, by when does something need to be done, and what is the escalation process if an action is not completed. So the meeting itself and exchanging information is not the outcome. The decisions and the coordinated actions across all the departments who need to be involved, this is should be the outcome of a tier meeting. So we have seen these three examples in regards of operational issues. So all these three examples show different situations, but they have underlying patterns that are very similar. So we have fragmented information that is sitting in several departments and systems. There's a missing context in regards to what is the impact on our operations. Unclear ownership. Who owns that actions that we need to drive? Delaying decisions as we are not having the full picture of what these microstops, for example, mean. Weak follow-ups, repeated issues, and so on. So the operational visibility is not only just about seeing the data, it's about seeing what requires an action that we need to take here. So what do leading manufacturers do differently? So leading manufacturing organizations do not necessarily have less complexity. They're just better in managing this complexity. So when an issue is identified, the information is connected to the relevant batch, to the line, to the organization, and maybe also referring to previous events. So, and also that issue is connected to maybe a decision and an action and an ownership of that action. So this changes the entire operating model. So instead of every function interpreting the situation by themselves independently, teams work from a common view on the operational picture. So the important objective is that we are enable humans to make more informed, focused, and effective decisions at the end of the day. And when we are looking at the architectures that should enable us, we have, as we already said, implemented these what we call core systems or systems of record, MES, ERP, LIMS, and so on. All that is based on a very solid data foundation where we have integrated automation system, cybersecurity in place, so we can trust the data that we're going to get from the shop floor. So, but that doesn't give us all that data and information does not necessarily give us a better operational decisions. It just shows us what has happened on the shop floor. So the value on the shop floor is actually created when we are talking about that we are making informed decisions based upon the information that we get out of our execution layer about our core system, so that we fully understand what has happened, where did it happen, what batch is impacted, what equipment is impacted, what is the impact on our operational process, and who needs to act, and what should happen next. I mean, who owns also that action of what happens next. So this is, and that value creation, that turning operational context into decisions and actions, that is part of the layer that we call operational intelligence. And this is where also intelligent operation systems are sitting in order to provide to put all these information out of our system of records, our core systems, into context with the actual process and the humans in order to make to execute that process. So the difference is not just getting more data out of our process and providing them into nice dashboards. It's transforming trusted data into an operational context, and then have coordinated actions across the entire organization. This is what we call collective intelligence. So if AI is currently part of most of all the manufacturing strategy discussions, a topic that you can't avoid these days. So what does it mean when we're talking about AI in the context of pharmaceutical manufacturing? We should be very precise, actually, what are AI use cases that provide a practical value. So the objective is of AI should be that AI supports decision making and putting action into place when we're talking about operations. So AI agents can help to support operators, production managers, shift managers with specific decision making and action tracking processes. And there are probably many use cases that we can think of. So where AI is probably good is summarizing things, detecting patterns, prioritizing things, and at the end of the day, also providing recommendations and giving the operator guidance. Um, but all that needs to happen within the context of our operational process. So without that context, AI may be an oppressive tool, but with that context of our operations, it becomes really, really useful. So when we are talking about, at the end of the day, intelligent operations and how intelligent operations platform can support organizations to become better in regards of managing their day-on-day operations. What we see is productivity gains. Productivity gains by not spending time with unnecessary meetings and forth and back communication between departments. We see less production losses because we are able to make decisions faster. We are faster and having more better information when we are doing the shift handover from one shift to the next. And then also that cross-functional coordination, so quality, maintenance, production, planning, and so on. They are looking at all of that information in the same operational context. So discussions become shorter and more, and action is put in place. So that leads us also to better cross-functional coordination between the departments and increased decision quality. And this is where AI can add real value at the end of the day, not just as a technology exercise, but as an operational assistance. So summarizing what really matters in the context of operations, highlighting patterns, preparing teams for decisions, and also capturing knowledge and helping organizations and parts of the organization to search for things much smarter. So at the end of the day, the operational direction is more usable capacity, fewer delays, better coordination, and that on a daily basis, every day. So Anna, Beat, and Daniel, they know and they have experienced that operational efficiency is created through the accumulation of many smaller improvements. We have seen that with the shift handover. We have seen that with earlier detection of potential issues that are recurring all the time, speeding up the decision process, doing tier meetings in a better way that they are not just for information collection, but also for generating decisions and actions. So saving 20 minutes during one shift and over may not appear strategically significant. But if we account doing the math and doing that for 3 shifts every day in several production areas, 365 days, 365 days a year, that accumulated additional capacity becomes really substantial. Same applies to meetings. If we are more focused on meetings, that additional capacity becomes really significant. So the most relevant categories in order to create value are search less, chase less, wait less, and repeat less. And this allows us to spend more time on executing the work that creates manufacturing value. So sometimes it's not that easy to understand where to start with all of that. So what we created is a practical self-assessment of where are these hidden frictions within your organization. And you can use that QR code in order to download that white paper, that brochure, and start the self-assessment today, identifying what are the hidden frictions and find the starting point. Start with one line, start with one production area, start with a small area, and then do it on the wider basis as well. So let me close with one central message. We don't need more data within our production environment. The future of manufacturing excellence and higher productivity will be defined not by collecting more data from the shop floor, but by the speed, the quality, and the consistency, how we're going to use that data in order to make decisions and use the systems that enable us to make these decisions and put them into actions. All right, I'm a little bit over time. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Thomas, for sharing your insights. It's been an amazing presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There are there have not been any questions in the chat so far, and as we are a little bit over time, I would recommend to be mindful of everyone's time and suggest we skip the Q&A for today. But if you have any questions that come up afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be super happy to continue the conversation. And with that, I would say, once again, I would like to say thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great day.